Welcome once again. I'm Richard Fredrickson, and you are in downtown Joliet at the Joliet Restaurant and Tavern, second floor in the library, and we welcome you. And I also invite you to come by for lunch or dinner. This is a great place for just the two of you, the whole group. If you have a birthday party, anniversary, bar mitzvah, whatever it is, they've got a great room up here, bridal showers. Just contact Juliet. You can do that. It'll show it up on the screen. Their phone number. It'll be toward the end of the show. They'll get the phone number up there for you. We have a special friend, a special guest here today. This appearance has taken me, when were you first elected?
I was elected, took office in January of 2013.
So it's taken me from January 13, 2012.
This is the first time you asked me. This is the first time he's asked me.
Yeah, see, now this is how we're going to have this interview. I'm going to have to ask questions that are not rehearsed. Are you ready for this?
Throw the rehearsal out.
This is a little personal, but
okay.
What's Lynn and Mary really like on the WJOL Ladies of the Year? I mean, are they really? I mean, do you guys really get along, or is this all an act?
You are going to make me start crying at the beginning of the interview. They are. I was thinking about. I miss them so much. They are my friends. I mean, it's not, none of that is put on. It's all real. It's all our chemistry together. Yeah. They are wonderful people. I will tell you this, Lynn Lichtenauer is probably one of the finest women I've ever met. She taught me that you can be good to other women and it doesn't diminish you. You know how women have that weird way where they, almost like a jealousy thing. And for some reason, even as little girls, we're taught that we have to be in competition with one another. Lynn taught me you can be good to everyone, and it really builds you up. She's good to every person she meets. And Mary Lancaster has made me a better person. Knowing her, there are many times, especially as I'm in Springfield, that's a challenging place, where I think, what would Mary, I know this sounds odd, but she's like the type of person that always does things for the right reason. And so I was driving here thinking, God, I really miss them. You know, I drove through downtown. We're going to be here tomorrow night at the New Orleans North Festival.
Party. Yeah.
And Mary's going to be downtown. I hope Lynn's going to be here, but the show is tomorrow morning, so I'll get to see them. And we're not together all that often anymore, so I look forward to that. But I miss them a lot. They're great people.
The show she's talking about is WJOL, and the actual name of it is called?
Lynn, Mary, Natalie.
Ah, great name for the show. At, I believe, still at 9:05 in the morning?
Roughly 9:05. If we get there on time, they sometimes have to play another commercial because we're so organized.
It's a great show. If 1340 on the AM dial, if you're brand new to Joliet, that should be the local station you listen to, by the way. You know, in recent days we've had hail and rain, all kinds of weather. Make sure you listen to WJOL 1340, you newbies out there. The guest who I have here today as a friend, but it happens to be, for many of you, your state representative. And why not draw an imaginary line and tell us what your district encompasses?
So the 98th district was newly drawn in the remap at the end of 2011. So so I'm going to draw that imaginary line. So the northern border is Boughton Road up in Bolingbrook.
Okay.
The eastern border, and again, this is rough, is Weber Road. The southern border is Black Road, and the western border is Essington, and there's a panhandle between Theodore and Caton Farm that goes all the way out to County Line. So in that shade in that area, and that's the 98th district.
And your office is located?
My office is on the south side of the district at Black and Infantry. It's if you're familiar with Jameson's Restaurant or the old. So if you're Old Joliet, it's the old Charlie Club building.
Yes.
It's in that building there. So.
Yeah, great. We will put contact information up there for you. We'll have a phone number. You have a website, I'm sure.
We do.
Yeah.
I wish I could think of it right.
No, you don't have to.
Actually,
Look up there.
we don't have a website, but we have email access.
That's what we're
I'm a
looking
pretty
for.
hands-on person.
Yeah.
So I'm out in the district all the time,
Yeah.
but I'm accessible by phone, by email, in person, and we have a state website through the ilga.gov.
So we will put all of that up for you, so you stay to the very end of
I gotta get a
the
website.
conversation and put that up there.
Yeah.
Okay?
I'll work on that.
Okay. I don't think you need a website, really. If you've got the email, because people want to, they'll be asking you questions.
I
And,
call everybody
you know,
back. I
yeah.
call anybody who calls my office, I return their calls.
There you
So
go.
that's the easiest way to get me.
Okay.
Call me, I'll call you back.
So if you don't want to wait to the very end of the show, what is that phone number?
It's 815-725-2741.
There you go. We might even put that up there during,
Okay.
during the interview. Okay, so everyone that comes on this show, if they're a baker, a banker, an accountant, whatever they may be, I always ask this question.
Okay.
And now I'm asking the question not about your accounting background, which we'll also get into, but why in the world, in the state of Illinois, at this present time, why in the world would you want to be an elected official, madam?
Well, so anybody who is familiar with the financial problems we have here in Illinois may not be aware that I am one of only a few CPAs in the entire General Assembly. I'm the only practicing CPA in the General Assembly. When I tell my constituents this, they always go, oh, now that makes sense why we're where we're at. But there's not a lot of people that have the background and the experience that I have. So I wanted to take everything I was trained to do. For almost 2 decades, I've been a CPA, an accountant, and take it to Springfield where they really need my help. So that's why I did it.
Okay. Now, you're accounting, CPA. We are going to talk about a firm that happens to be one of my favorites, good people. Tell us all about Wermer, Rogers, Duran and Ruzon, the firm that I think you're still working with. Yeah.
I work a lot, mostly nowadays during tax season. I've been on staff there for almost 20 years. You build a client base. I've got a lot of, I always say I got a lot of old clients. They're not all old, but several of them are retired. And when I decided to run for office, they're like, how can you leave me? So I promised them I wouldn't leave them. And so as it happens, it kind of happens, works out pretty good for me. There are 3 weeks during the session in Springfield is technically the end of January through the end of May, most years. It's still going on now. But there's some breaks, there's some weeks that we're off, and during those weeks I come back home and then I work at the firm and work on those tax returns.
Good. Did you ever see the movie Mr. Smith Goes to Washington?
You know what? We were talking about this the other day. I have not seen as many old movies as I should, and I have not seen it, but I know it's Jimmy Stewart.
Yes.
And I know he goes to Washington to do
Yes.
good. Does he freak out or something during?
Yes.
Yeah, I can understand that.
You don't need to see the movie now, you got the whole plot.
Why does he freak out?
I don't know, but my transition is now Mrs. Smith goes to Springfield.
Yeah.
And what was that like? Not now, but in the very first couple of weeks, couple of months, you're a brand new rep, and what takes place?
It is. So I had never been to Springfield till I was elected. A lot of people go for their 8th grade trip and things. I had never been. I think I was in Springfield when I was very young, 5 or 6. So I don't remember any of that. I remember rubbing Lincoln's nose at the statue.
You're the one.
I was the one. But when I have seen it since, and I thought, this seemed bigger the last time I saw it, because, you know, you're looking.
Yeah,
anyway, it is the most magnificent. If you have not been to Springfield, please go. Our capital it'll take your breath away. It's so beautiful. And there's not a day, I hope this never wears off as long as I'm there, but there's not a day that I am not overwhelmed by what I've been chosen by the people in the 98th district to do. And you walk in there, and the enormity of that and the responsibility it's not lost on me.
Yeah.
It is gorgeous. It is an honor. There's many times I walk in there, and it almost takes your breath away. And then you get inside, and then the games start. But oftentimes at night I go out and I walk around. You try to have as much normalcy in your life as possible while you're there, because it is a very stressful, high-paced environment. So at night I'll go out and walk, and I always walk. I try from the east end toward the Capitol. So on Capitol Street, you can see the dome.
Yeah.
And I always stop, and if I'm with other people, I'll say, we worked there.
Yeah.
And it is, it's quite an honor, I will tell you. It's pretty amazing.
As you're walking, not toward the Capitol, but as you're walking down Glenwood, Jefferson, Weber, Midland, Black, and someone walks up to you, what are those questions those people ask you today? What's those, maybe the top 3 questions?
I do a lot of,
Well, the coffees, you have those
well,
coffees.
I do coffees, I do town halls. I was out this afternoon knocking on doors. People are a little, once in a while they're stunned by, most of them have gotten used to me by now, because I probably have been to every door 3 or 4 times now since taking office. And they'll say, well, didn't you just get elected? I'm here doing my job. My job is to represent my constituents. I'm supposed to go to Springfield and make decisions on their behalf. I need to know what they think. And the only way for me to find out what they think is to go and ask them. So it's quite an adventure. The thing that, if I had to pick one thing that we talk about all the time, is property taxes. It is the one issue that each homeowner is affected by and is desperately in need of. We need to change the system somehow. 3 times this month I voted on a property tax freeze bill that was defeated, and I'm to be honest with you, it was defeated because of partisan politics. But we need to work toward to finding solutions to that one problem in particular. And that's a huge local issue. I think it's all over the state, but in my district, it's the #1 issue.
If we were having this interview 20 years ago, that would be one of the top 3 questions that people would ask their state rep, or, because it has to be solved.
It
because
does.
We have people paying huge taxes for their homes.
The way the system, and now not to get too technical, but the way it works is those items that comprise your property tax bill, those governments that that can levy taxes, do so statutorily without having to go to the voters. They are, so let's just say I am the road district or whatever, and I have been a really good steward of tax dollars, so much so that the next year I don't need to go and increase my levy.
Right.
The problem is they're penalized for that, because whatever they're able to raise the levy to that particular year, they lose that. So the system is flawed. You're almost punished for good stewardship of tax dollars. So that's one of the things that we need to change within that system.
Yeah. Question number 2, is there a second question out there?
Public safety is always an issue out here. It's summertime. One of the biggest fears I have is we have a lot of fantastic youth programs in our area. Fantastic. If people could see the things that I've seen and read the things and meet the people that I've met, they would want these programs to stay solid. We have at-risk youth in our communities that are involved in programs that 99% of the kids that participate in these programs graduate from high school. That works, right?
Yeah,
so we always want to base what we spend on outcomes. That works. That's a win-win. So I worry about these programs that are very precarious right now. in a state that has financial problems to the level we do, there are going to be some cuts. But I worry about things that are they really are important and they really do work. And in the long run, the small amount we put into them on this end saves us so much more money than on a couple of years down the road.
Of incarceration.
These are facts. We got to be smart where we put our money.
And we are, well, I don't know when you're going to be watching the show. I have no idea. Maybe at 2 o'clock in the morning, and maybe in August, might be in July. But as we are talking here at Juliet, we are 2 weeks or less away from July 1. And what happens on July 1?
If the legislature does not pass a budget, then there is none of the offices will be granted spending authority. So that means there's no money.
Yeah.
And so we'll see what happens. But I'm hoping that, I mean, we're going back. Technically, session ended May 31st. We are now in overtime. Not as exciting as a Blackhawks overtime by far, but almost as aggressive.
It's far more important. I'm sorry to say this, but
yeah,
it's more important.
There's some Blackhawks fans that would not agree.
I know.
But we're working at it. I can tell you, none of us take it lightly.
Yeah. I'm going to go through some questions here that
sure.
the producer put together here for me.
Okay.
This is an interesting thing, because when you watch a CNN or Fox or MSNBC, I always get that mixed up. Sometime during the week, they're always talking about the middle class. The middle class is disappearing. The middle class is no longer with us. The middle class is always middle class. So my question to you then is, how does the state, if it can, strengthen the middle class? How do you do it?
Well, the middle class, and it was interesting because I was with our senator, Jennifer Bertino-Tarrant, and she talked about how being devoted to salvaging and standing up for the middle class is so important to her. She came from a middle class family. I'm from a middle class family. But she talked about her family having what they needed, and that her parents worked so they had what they needed. This is all that the middle class families want in our area. And because of the lack of jobs, the lack of support for middle class families, they're hanging the balance. Our numbers are down. We're being compared to Wisconsin and Indiana. The middle class families and the middle class has shrunk in those states since in the last couple of years. It's about jobs, and it's about education, and it's about putting our money in the right spots. The state is not a business. It is not in business to make money. It's more like a service organization. You pay tax dollars to get programs and services. If we didn't need the state for programs and services, we wouldn't have to pay taxes. So it's putting the money in the right places. Now, that's always a lively discussion. You know, where is the right places?
I believe the right place for you is something, and this guy over here says, well, yeah, but
and that's why negotiation is so, and talking to people and coming to an agreement, compromise is so vital to this process. So putting the money where it's needed, where it pays off, like in those at-risk youth programs, early childhood programs, senior programs. These are things that are all really hanging in the balance, and I am standing strong and not backing down from my opinion of why we need to put money into those programs.
When you talk about negotiations, when you're in Springfield, what impact, if any, all those lobbyists have on you and your fellow representatives and the bureaucrats? When before you arrived in Springfield, there were bureaucrats. Oftentimes people say, you know, particularly when you talk about term limits, if you had term limits, it would just turn the control over to the bureaucrats because they're there all the time.
Well, okay, so let me address the lobbyist question. So Lobbyist is, when people think of lobbyist, they think of like Snidely Whiplash and twisting his mustache and some evil guy. There are lobbyists everywhere. Sometimes a lobbyist is from a social service organization right here in town. People from the organization come down and talk to us about what they want. Here's what's important to us. Here's what we hope you will do. Understand where we're at. Now, there's some lobbyists that are, high dollar. They lobby for a living. Their hearts aren't wrapped around their issue, but they're hired to go out and meet the legislators and forward their agendas. Lobbying is part of the process. You can't know everything. My expertise is in accounting and budget making and things like that. There's a lot of my colleagues that don't know much about that. So the lobbying is part of the process. A good lobbyist will come to you and say, Richard, I've got this issue and I represent XYZ company or XYZ organization, and here's what we're afraid of, and this bill is going to hurt us, and here's why. And then they'll say, our opposition will tell you this. Or I'll ask, what does the opposition, who would say, who's opposed to what you're trying to do here? And so it's a conversation. These are vital, important conversations that people have to get to where they, because I will tell you there have been some situations where a lobbyist has come in and say, we feel this way. 10 minutes later, the opposition comes in, we feel this way. I've called them back into my office and we've sat there and we have hammered out legislation that everybody can agree to.
It's interesting.
It's the way it's supposed to work.
It's interesting because as just the guy listening to radio or watching television, when you hear a Democrat come on and he or she says, this is, well, that sounds pretty good. And then you have the Republican come on there and they say it, and you say, well, that sounds okay too. So for the rest of us, rest of us, I wouldn't say that. But, we really do depend, and the reputation of elected officials are just above, in fact, they're probably below used car salesmen.
I was going to say like pond scum or something.
Yeah.
It's one of the most fascinating parts of my new job. I went from an industry, accountants are very well respected, we're very well educated, we have, in many cases, I would say most of us have above board integrity. I mean, people rely on us for certain, our specialized skills, and with that comes a lot of integrity.
Yeah.
So overnight, I walked from the accounting world into the political world, and apparently my integrity vanished with it.
Yeah.
But I'm here to tell you there are so many, if this makes our listeners, our viewers feel any better, there are so many people there that care deeply about the people they represent. I don't know how you can do the work we do, especially in this particular time, and not feel it. I think if you don't feel it in your gut, that gnawing of, is this the right thing? Should I do this? What side of this issue should I be on? If you don't care, then you shouldn't do this job. The people that, and I had a huge freshman class when we came in. There was 25 of us in the house that came in. On both sides of the aisle, there are people that care deeply about the job they're trying to do. I don't always think the media paints us that way.
Really? I can't believe that.
And but I would encourage people to reach out and have conversations with their elected officials, locally, statewide, nationally. Get to know these people, because I think most of us are pretty good judges of character. When you talk to someone, we know. You live long enough, you live some life, you know when someone's telling you the truth or not. You can feel that from a person. And I'm telling you, there are very few people there that I would put in a category of the politician who's, what do we always hear? The politicians are lining their pockets, or they don't care about their constituents. The great majority of people and the colleagues and the people that I keep company with do. They care deeply about it.
to the viewer out there, and Natalie just said something really important, and I'll bet you're not doing it. The vast majority of us do not call our representative, do not call our congressman or woman, and all we do is, we complain a lot. I think that maybe the coin needs to be turned to, as Natalie's doing with coffees and knocking on doors and lunches, etc. Other reps, I'm sure, are doing the same thing. That's a two-way street. And we complain a lot. I guess maybe the thing to do is to take some action and to be more of a part of our government. Enough said for me. Here's something I'd love to do.
Yes.
If I made myself king of the state of Illinois, I like doing this, the royalty part, I would do this.
Yes.
State representatives and our state, I don't know the state, but the senators, but the state reps deserve 4 years because same thing with our congressmen.
Can you imagine
All
that?
you're doing is campaigning because you have what? How many months do you really have before you have to start worrying about next year or the next election?
Well, it's difficult.
Yeah.
I guess I didn't think about that particular thing when I ran the first time. It is difficult because I just got elected for my second term. Thank you, voters. Was at the end of 2014. So my second term started at the beginning of this year. So I'm in my third year, second term. September,
Yeah.
we're going to have petitions. You got to start getting petitions for the 2016 election. But I will tell you, I work a lot, all the time. Actually, all the time. I'm not trying to, and it's not a complaint. In order to do a good job, this is what these people deserve.
Yeah.
And we're going through some difficult times. The level of dedication that I bring to this job, my constituents deserve it. They want somebody out there that's going to work hard for them, and I think they see that I do that. Even during times when it's political times, I'm still a state rep. I have to do both jobs.
I'm going to ask you what your priorities are, but before that, I have 3 men who I want your perspective, insight. If you've ever talked with these 3 men, and what do you think?
Okay.
Okay. And,
George Clooney.
And
No.
George Clooney.
Ardale Evans.
No. One gentleman's last name is Cullerton.
President Cullerton.
Yes.
President John Cullerton.
John Cullerton.
I have had the delightful pleasure of being at a table at dinner. It's kind of impromptu. He's a very bright man, likable. I don't serve in the Senate, so I don't know more than that about him, but he was very nice, and I enjoyed his company.
Okay.
Everybody seems to like him a lot, both sides of the aisle.
And then there's a fellow from Chicago named Madigan.
I serve in the Illinois House of Representatives. Speaker Madigan is the Speaker of the House. He is, let me tell you maybe some things that people don't know. Everybody knows he's been there a long, long time. He even jokes about it now. Very hardworking. I don't think I've seen anybody work as hard. Very dedicated. He is a no-nonsense leader, and he takes his job very seriously. He doesn't call me and ask me what I think about things. I used to joke, in my first term, my seniority number was 107, and people would say to me, tell that speaker, you go in there, you march in there and tell him, and I said, I know this may seem hard to believe, but he doesn't call up, hey, 107, what do you think about what I'm doing? Now I'm 87, which kind of speaks to that term limit thing you talked about. There's a natural, way things recycle through. So I'm now 87. Because people retire, thank you. People retire or people move on to other things, so there's a natural flow of people. Not everybody's there as long as...
So number 15, number 10, these are people he would have conversations with, you think?
The speaker would have conversations
Yeah.
with? Not always.
Yeah.
Not always. I'm not in leadership,
Yeah.
and I think he has a leadership team.
Okay.
I get frustrated with that. I have a lot of things I'd like to discuss with him. My constituents have a lot of questions. He is responsive if I tell him that there's something important to my district, he's responsive to that. I think he appreciates my willingness and my ability to work across the aisle with my Republican colleagues. I think he appreciates my my dedication and my diligence and my background. Many times in caucus I'll ask questions that only I can ask because of my accounting background. So I think he appreciates that.
There's one more.
Yes.
Relatively new,
Tall.
very tall, thin fella. Our governor, Ron.
I've had a dinner where Governor Rauner invited Joliet Junior College to the mansion to sample the culinary arts program's best. It was so good. He sat across the table. He was very nice. He has made an attempt to see all the legislators either at a breakfast or a dinner. I was invited to a dinner. I am part of the downstate Democratic caucus. Downstate, you think Southern Illinois. Anything south of Chicago is downstate. What we need is really a suburban caucus for that. Because the one thing that's really interesting, and not to get off the governor question, but one of the things that's fascinated me is it's less about the R or the D next to your name, but it's more where you're from. So downstate has a natural, it has a different agenda than Chicago.
Sure.
But even the suburbs have different agendas from Chicago and downstate. So that's more a likely cause of contention than your R or your D.
Almost,
So.
well, I don't know if it's anti-Chicago, but there's probably a lot of conversation about, well, that's Chicago, and then there's the
that
rest
happens
of the
a
state
lot.
of Illinois.
Yeah, that happens a lot.
Priorities, let's wrap things up with,
Okay.
what are your priorities?
My number one priority is to protect the middle-class families in my district, to protect I'm on the Human Services Appropriations Committee. I'm on the General Services Appropriations Committee. People tell me that's a lot to do, and it is. I feel a responsibility as an accountant, as a certified public accountant, to take what I know and help craft these budgets and protect some of these programs, especially in human services. This human services budget is where the dollars are decided for early childhood, for senior programs, for the veterans, you've heard this term, the most vulnerable citizens. They're not kidding about that. That is my number one priority, is to protect those people. That's number one. Education's a huge priority for me. We talk about it, it annoys me. We talk about how important education is, and yet we don't do anything about it. And public safety always. We are fortunate to live in the United States of America, but I think sometimes we take that for granted. And so we've got to be diligent. We've got to protect our kids. In Will County, there's been a lot of high-profile crimes against women. I have a women's legislative advisory committee that we've taken up as of last Saturday. We've decided our goal will be to take up the issues that affect single mothers and education and protection of kids and families. So we're working on that too.
And another priority of yours is, and this is for another program, I mean, we should have a group discussion on this.
We
Because
should
it's
have a roundtable thing.
Yeah, we should do that for the heroin, horrible heroin situation. Improving, but it's certainly, you know, people think, well, that's, you know, that's in Chicago, that's in the big city. It's everywhere. Very sad.
My friend Mary Lancaster and I have a saying, just because you don't talk about it doesn't mean it's not happening. The heroin epidemic in the state of Illinois is critical. It's critical. The Illinois General Assembly, through House Bill 1 and the leadership of Leader Lou Lang, brought forth this omnibus bill to address the heroin issue, but also other problems with addiction. One of those things that I'm afraid that will be affected negatively in our budget is those programs that help people that are struggling with addiction. We have probably more than, I always say 10,000, but at this point it might be more than 10,000 people in our Department of Corrections that are there on nonviolent DUIs or other nonviolent drug charges, a lot, or as users, not as dealers, but as users. These people are sick people. They need treatment. They don't. It's almost cruel.
Yeah, I can say this. You can't say this probably, but they don't belong in prison. They need additional help and assistance.
They need treatment. They need help.
Yeah.
And so those are the things that that I'm kind of. I'm kind of 100% behind. I'm telling. These are the things that speak to me as a citizen, as a mother, as you know. So those are the things I'm.
Say hi to your daughter.
Hi, Bridget.
There you go.
I just left her. She was out knocking on doors with me.
Was she?
Yes.
That's great.
She always says I throw her under the bus, but I was she just stands there because it was hot and she wanted to go eat, and so I bribe her with food to come with me. But it's really nice having her with me, and the best part of that is she can listen to the exchanges that we have at the doors, and she will sit over lunch, and we did that today, where she says, well, what about this? And she'll ask me these questions that maybe she would not have thought about otherwise. So
thank you so much.
Thank you for having me after all this time.
Representative Natalie Manley and yours truly, Richard Fredericks, wish you a great day, and we'll see you next time.